Hi, hello, welcome to my little library. Today's story is Snow White. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. Her stepmother, the queen, was also very beautiful. She often gazed into her magical mirror and asked, "Mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of all?" The mirror always replied, "You." As the years passed, Snow White grew lovelier and lovelier. One day the mirror told the queen, "Snow White is now the fairest." Furious, the queen ordered a huntsman to kill Snow White and bring back her lungs and liver. But the huntsman let the girl go. He killed a boar and brought its lungs and liver to queen to trick her. Snow White found a cottage belonging to 7 dwarfs. The dwarfs invited her to live with them. In return for their kindness, she cooked and cleaned. Meanwhile, the mirror told the queen that Snow White still lived. Filled with anger, she disguised herself as a merchant and went to the dwarf's cottage. Snow White loved the dresses the merchant had for sale, but when she tried one on, the magical laces clinched too tightly. Snow White couldn't breathe, she fell down dead. With Snow White dead, the queen happily asked the mirror who was the fairest. The mirror replied, "Snow White." The queen fumed. The dwarfs had returned home and loosened the laces. Snow White had come back to life. The next day, the queen went back to the cottage with a poisoned comb. As soon as Snow White put it in her hair, she fell down dead. Sure of her success, the queen returned home and asked the mirror who was the fairest. It again replied, "Snow White." The dwarfs had found Snow White lifeless and removed the comb. "Curses!" the queen cried. She poisoned an apple and went back to the cottage. Snow White was hungry, and the apple looked so good. As soon as she bit into it, she fell down dead. This time the dwarfs couldn't help Snow White. There were no laces to loosen and no comb to remove. Saddened, they put her in a glass coffin in their garden. Back at the castle, the queen questioned the mirror. It answered, "You are fairest." The queen cackled with glee. One day a handsome prince saw Snow White and fell in love. His servants carried her coffin to his home. On the way, however, the servants tripped. A bit of poisoned apple flew from Snow White's mouth. She opened her eyes and instantly fell in love with the prince. They decided to marry. About the same time, the queen asked the mirror who was the fairest. The mirror replied, "The prince's bride." The queen dashed to the prince's wedding. She had to see the bride for herself. When the queen arrived, Snow White saw her and sounded the alarm. The prince's guards grabbed the queen and put a pair of sizzling hot iron shoes on her feet. She danced until she fell over dead. The prince and Snow White lived happily ever after.